Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature.
That's right.
We've got some excerpts here from the audiobook Vision Channel's recording. And our mission, really, is to sort of distill the key insights. Why do people tick? Why do we tick?
Yeah, it's fundamental stuff.
Okay.
And these sources you have, they're a great starting point for looking, beneath the surface.
Definitely.
Understanding those hidden drivers, not just in others, the difficult ones, but also in ourselves when we do things that will surprise us.
Totally. We've all been there, haven't we? Confused by someone's actions or even thinking, why on earth did I do that?
Exactly.
So this deep dive, the idea is to get some clarity, maybe feel a bit more in control when dealing with, well, people.
And that brings us right to a core problem the source identifies.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to live on the surface,
Okay.
reacting emotionally, forming these really quick, simple opinions about folks and ourselves, too.
Right, those easy labels like, oh, he's just evil, or, I wasn't myself. We say things like that.
We do, but the source argues those labels, they kind of stop us, don't they?
How so?
Well, they prevent us from seeing the real patterns. We miss the recurring behaviors because we've slapped on a label instead of understanding the root cause.
So we keep running into the same problem.
Precisely. So the source is basically saying, hey, dive deeper. Understand the actual roots of human behavior.
Go beyond the snap judgments.
Yes. And if we do that, the source lays out, I think, 5 key benefits we gain from this deeper understanding.
Okay, let's hear them.
First up, liberation. Getting free from taking things personally.
Oh, that's a big one. So many people struggle with that.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that people's reactions, their comments, their coldness, it often stems from their internal world, their past, their emotions.
They're projecting it onto us. It's not really about us as individuals.
Spot on. It's like you're just a screen for their internal movie sometimes.
Insightful.
And if you grasp that, really internalize it, the source suggests your reaction changes. Instead of getting instantly defensive or hurt.
You get curious, like, what's going on with them?
Exactly. Which leads to being calmer, more tolerant. And apparently, people pick up on that lack of judgment, makes you more likable.
Interesting ripple effect. Okay, what's benefit number 2?
Mastering the interpretation of cues. This tackles our urge to just, pigeonhole people instantly.
And we tend to believe their explanations, right? Especially if they sound good or fit our first impression.
We do. We accept these self-serving stories. But the source warns, look, first impressions can be really misleading.
So slow down the judgment process.
Right. Train ourselves to actually analyze behavior, not just react to the surface.
And it mentions that idea of thinking in opposites.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. Like extreme confidence might actually be masking deep insecurity. Look for the contradiction.
And the shadow, what's that about?
The shadow is basically all the stuff we don't like about ourselves, the things we try to hide. Envy, pettiness.
Yeah, we all have one.
Absolutely. And the source says, watch for glimpses of it leaking out. Those moments when someone acts out of character. Maybe that is their character peeking through.
Even small things like laziness or making foolish choices repeatedly.
Yes, those details can be clues to someone's underlying nature long before it causes a major issue.
So honing this skill helps us gauge things like loyalty, trustworthiness.
Crucial stuff for avoiding bad relationships, whether at work or home. That's the core idea.
Okay, benefit 3. Outthinking toxic types. The aggressors, the envious, the manipulators.
Yeah, the ones who often seem charming at first, right? That's the tricky part.
They draw you in?
Exactly. They use charm, maybe flattery, to lower your guard. Then, bam, the manipulation starts.
And it throws you off balance. The source mentions they create pressure to overwhelm your thinking.
Right, makes it hard to react strategically. But the best defense, according to the source.
See them coming. I identify the type early on.
That's it. Forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah.
You can avoid them, or at least not be blindsided.
It's about seeing past the charm, the cover stories, and maybe even focusing on their weaknesses.
Yeah, understanding their insecurities can actually neutralize the intimidation factor they rely on.
And the source even suggests these difficult encounters can be learning opportunities for self-mastery.
A bit of a silver lining, perhaps. A chance to practice navigating these challenging dynamics.
Okay, number 4. This one's about motivation and influence, how to really move people.
Right. And it argues against the direct approach, just arguing or lecturing someone into changing their mind.
Because that usually just makes them dig their heels in, doesn't it?
Pretty much. People are naturally stubborn, resistant to being told what to do or think.
So what's the alternative?
Lower their resistance first. Understand their insecurities, don't trigger them. Frame things in terms of their self-interest, their desired image.
Appeal to their perspective.
And interestingly, it connects back to our state, our own mood, our attitude that energy is contagious.
People respond to how we carry ourselves.
Often more than the words themselves. If you're calm, genuinely interested, not defensive, that itself can be persuasive. For leaders, it emphasizes setting the tone through empathy and example.
Got it. And the fifth benefit, this one turns inward, right?
Yes. Understanding our own negative patterns, it highlights how easily we spot flaws in others.
But we're pretty good at overlooking the same things in ourselves. The classic blind spot.
Totally. The source says we are all cut from the same cloth. We share the same human tendencies, good and bad.
And realizing that isn't depressing, it's actually empowering.
That's the argument. Acknowledging our shared potential for negativity allows us to actually address it in ourselves.
Through self-awareness, looking honestly at our motives, our own shadow, our passive aggression.
Exactly, that kind of ruthless self-honesty. It not only helps us spot these things better in others, but it brings humility.
And the end result is accepting ourselves more fully, warts and all. Less hypocrisy.
That's the idea. More authenticity. Okay, so with that foundation, the source then dives into some specific concepts, like this idea of the inner Athena.
Inspired by Pericles, the Athenian leader.
Right. The source paints him as this beacon of rationality, especially compared to the emotional reactions around him. His defensive strategy against Sparta, for instance.
Innovative, logical, even if things didn't go perfectly with the plague and all that.
What's key is how he held sway through wisdom and argument, initially at least. He embodied this potential for rational thought.
The inner Athena within us all. But why don't we access it more often?
Emotions, basically. Our own, others, excitement, fear, anxiety, they cloud our minds, make clear thinking difficult.
So nurturing this inner rationality means consciously choosing it over knee-jerk emotional reactions.
It's a practice, valuing logic.
Yeah.
And the source gives steps. First, question your emotions. Why the anger? Why the resentment?
Digging underneath the surface feeling.
Yeah. When you examine them, they lose some power. It's about thinking for ourselves, not just reacting. Considering options calmly.
Resisting distractions too, like getting sucked into petty dramas.
Exactly. The source compares it to mental resistance training. Practice makes the mind more flexible, more resilient.
But as we aim for that rationality, we need to watch out for biases, right? The source lists several.
Oh, definitely. Biases are everywhere. Confirmation bias is huge. We look for stuff that proves us right and ignore everything else.
Like finding that one online study that supports your view.
Totally. Then there's conviction bias. Feeling strongly means it must be true, makes us susceptible to charismatic, confident types.
Appearance bias, judging by the cover. The halo effect.
Yep. Assuming someone good-looking or successful must be competent or kind in other areas too.
Group bias, just going along to get along. Adopting ideas to fit in.
Without even realizing how much the group is shaping our thoughts.
And blame bias, pointing the finger elsewhere when things go wrong, protects the ego.
It stops us from learning from mistakes. Huge obstacle.
Finally, superiority bias. We all think we're more rational, more ethical than the average person.
Which lets us justify our own questionable actions. If everyone was as rational as they think they are, the world would be quite different.
So true. Okay, so knowing these biases, how do we actively cultivate that inner Athena? Any practical tips?
Yeah, the source gives a few. Start with deep self-knowledge. Understand your emotional triggers, your weak points under stress.
Patterns and bad decisions, underlying insecurities, but also know your strengths, right?
Yes, to align actions with long-term goals. Then examine your emotions ruthlessly. Let the initial heat pass. Then ask, where did that really come from?
Maybe journaling helps. Being brutally honest, fighting the ego's tendency to spin things.
Exactly. And try to find a neutral position. Observe yourself almost like an outsider with a bit of detachment, maybe even humor.
Create some space before reacting.
And that leads to the next tip. Increase your reaction time. Don't just fire back, pause. Step away, delay the email.
Time brings perspective, like mental resistance training, you said.
It is. And the last one is maybe the hardest. Accept people as facts. Stop judging constantly. Stop wishing they were different. See them more like neutral phenomena. Puzzles to understand, not problems to fix.
Radical acceptance. Sounds calming, if you can manage it.
It leads to calmness and deeper understanding, the source argues. Now, this connects to the next major theme. Self-love versus empathy, framed under the law of narcissism.
Okay, Empathy is key for connection, but our self-absorption gets in the way.
And that self-absorption or narcissism exists on a spectrum. It starts with that basic human need for attention from birth, which shapes our self-worth.
Right. So what's the spectrum look like?
At one end, the deep narcissist, extremely self-absorbed, sees others only as tools, needs constant validation.
Then functional narcissists may be where most of us are. Self-focused, but generally okay, capable of looking outward sometimes.
Pretty much. Then healthy narcissists, stronger sense of self, less needy, can genuinely focus on work or others, and beyond that.
True empathy, really absorbing oneself in another's experience.
Right, so the task becomes threefold. Understand the deep narcissist to protect ourselves, be honest about our own narcissistic leanings, and try to move towards that healthier, more empathetic end.
Because empathy creates a positive loop. Better relationships, better results.
Exactly. It leads to genuine positive attention. So how do we build empathy? The source breaks it down into 4 skills. First, the empathic attitude.
Okay, what's that involve?
Assuming ignorance, basically.
Yeah.
Don't assume you know what someone's about. Be curious. Let go of snap judgments. See them as an undiscovered country.
Resist the urge to talk about yourself immediately. Listen more.
Yes, actively listen, mirror back what you hear, and crucially, give others the same benefit of the doubt we give ourselves when explaining behavior. Counter that attribution bias.
It takes inner strength, self-acceptance.
It does. Second component, visceral empathy, that gut-level feeling, tuning into moods.
Paying attention to body language, tone of voice, noticing mismatches.
Precisely. And noticing your own physical reaction to their emotional state.
Third is analytical empathy, the intellectual exercise.
Putting yourself in their shoes. Considering their background, their fears, their desires, how they see themselves.
Seeing the world through their lens.
And finally, active empathy. Turning that understanding into constructive action.
Like offering support in the right way, avoiding their triggers, being patient.
Exactly. Putting the understanding to work.
Now, the source gives examples of these narcissistic types, right? To make it clearer.
It does, really vivid ones, starting with the complete control narcissist, using Stalin as the example.
Oof, okay.
Initial charm, making people feel valued, but hiding this desperate need for total control, resenting others' success, setting impossible traps.
Creating fear and insecurity.
Utterly. Key signs.
Yeah.
Charm turning to coldness, no deep relationships, often a troubled past, terrified subordinates. The insight is, remember, their deep insecurity hides behind the dominance.
Then the theatrical narcissist, Jean des Anges.
Yeah, all about the attention. Constantly playing roles, pious nun, possessed victim, whatever got the spotlight, faking miracles, craving drama.
Good at sensing what buttons to push in others.
The very signs. It's always about them. Exaggerated goodness or suffering, dramatic gestures, insight. Their fuel is attention, and they're master performers.
The narcissistic couple, the Tolstoys.
A tragic example. Deep narcissism in Leo met with Sonia's own intense self-absorption. Result: a destructive vortex of blame, manipulation, zero ability to see the other's reality.
Just two colliding egos. Insight. Recognize the destructive power when neither person can truly see the other.
Exactly. But then there's a positive example. The healthy narcissist, Ernest Shackleton.
The explorer, how is he narcissistic?
Healthy narcissism. He used empathy as a tool for leadership, for survival. He monitored morale, addressed individual needs, kept his own cool for the group.
Ah, so his focus on others served a larger goal.
Precisely. Keen awareness of dynamics, individual motivations. That's the identifier. Insight. Notice how their focus on others achieves something big.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. The power of persona. The law of compulsive behavior. We're all actors.
To some extent, yes. We learn to present certain fronts to fit in, get ahead. A well-managed persona protects us, gives us influence.
Requires keen observation skills, like Sherlock Holmes noticing tiny details.
Right, especially nonverbal cues. Body language dominance, submission through eye contact, posture, facial expressions, fake smiles versus real ones.
Even using symptoms like playing up illness for sympathy or control.
Yeah, that's mentioned too. Understanding these helps us gauge confidence, interact better with different types and insecure bosses, rising stars, petty tyrants. It also mentions watching for deception cues, inconsistencies, forced emotions.
This links to judging character strength, doesn't it? Still under compulsive behavior.
It does. Character, formed early and by habit, compels repeated actions. Look for the patterns. People rarely do something major just once.
Howard Hughes is an example there, apparently.
Right? His patterns became more extreme over time. The source says, gauge character by how people handle adversity, teamwork, patience, learning. Prioritize character and relationships.
And know our own character to break negative cycles, but watch out for illusions.
Yes. Don't assume a polished exterior means strong character. Charm can hide flaws. Reputation isn't always reality.
What are some signs to look for?
How they treat subordinates is a big one. How they act under pressure that reveals weaknesses. Their relationship to rules. Are they self-absorbed or do they listen? Words versus actions. Taking responsibility versus blaming.
And it lists types of weak character to avoid.
Yeah. The overly sensitive drama addicts, the inflexible self-saboteurs, and passive-aggressive moralizers, those who seem righteous but are often driven by envy.
Okay, so if we understand character, can we develop a better one?
That's the next step, developing a superior character. We have a choice. Stay ignorant, let patterns harden, or become aware and transform.
Can't just wish it away, though. Character is powerful.
Too powerful. It takes conscious effort. First, awareness of the negative patterns. Then, identify the roots, often early experiences. Acknowledge the weaknesses. Then, practice. Repetition of desired behaviors builds new habits, new neural pathways.
Actively shaping ourselves.
It's an active process. Finally, the source touches on creating desire, using Coco Chanel.
Her big shift was focusing on others' desires, not just her own.
Exactly. Reversing perspective. She tapped into fantasies, especially around transgression, that masculine edge in women's clothes.
3 keys mentioned.
1. Create mystery. Control information. Be unpredictable. Let people speculate. 2. Associate with the transgressive. Offer what feels slightly forbidden or boundary pushing.
And 3.
Stimulate competitive desires. Get influential people seen with your stuff. Make others want to keep up.
Because desire itself, the longing, is the driver, not just having the thing.
That's the underlying principle. Greene highlights. The pursuit is often more potent than the possession.
Wow. Okay, so this whole deep dive into the laws of human nature, drawing on these excerpts, it really shows that understanding people, including ourselves, it's a continuous process, isn't it?
Absolutely. Observation, reflection, strategic engagement. It never really stops.
So for our listeners, the starting point seems to be self-awareness, challenging those biases we talked about.
That's the foundation. And maybe start small. Pick 1 or 2 practical things, like try increasing your reaction time this week, or really focus on active listening in your next important conversation. Don't try to overhaul everything at once.
Good advice. Okay, here's a final thought to leave everyone with. Think about one relationship in your life. Could understanding the other person's core value system, that deep-seated sense of what matters to them, maybe tied to their own narcissism or insecurities, could that change how you interact? What hidden desires, what resentments might be bubbling under the surface, either in them or maybe even more importantly in yourself? Exploring that.
Well, it's the ongoing work, isn't it? Really trying to grasp human nature.